Everyone. It is great to see you all. Thank you for joining us here tonight for our second State Bridges event of 2026 in support of four incredible organizations in Georgia and Alaska. I'm Sarah Kermy, Executive Director here at States Win and States Win Action. I want to get right to the program, but first, I'd like to briefly go over tonight's agenda. First, I will give you a very quick overview of our State Bridges program. Then I'm going to pass it to Raven Douglas, our head of civic engagement, and she will have our host teams introduce themselves. And after that, our partner organizations will introduce themselves, followed by an amazing panel discussion moderated by Raven. Then there will be some time for questions from the audience, so please feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and we will get to as many as we possibly can. And of course, friends, we are here not only to learn from these incredible leaders, but also to support them with our dollars. If you have already given, which I know many of you have, thank you so much. It means so much to these organizations. But if you haven't yet, we still have an opportunity to raise even more tonight. So, for those of you who are new to the program, we started State Bridges in 2021 to activate our volunteers across the country to fundraise for organizations leading nonpartisan, year-round civic engagement and community organizing efforts. We decided to engage in this way because we believe in the power of these organizations to expand civic engagement and support traditionally marginalized communities, such as women and communities of color, in building long-term infrastructure for meaningful participation. And we know this work is critical. It helps connect individuals to the issues they care about, fostering ongoing participation in civic life, and deepening folks' understanding of how government and policy impact their daily life. And we are extremely proud to have had a tremendous impact. Since launching the State Bridges program, we have raised over $1 million for our partner organizations. And we've provided this boost early in the year when the funds go so much further and can do so much more. So with that, I'm going to thank you once again for joining us here tonight and hand it over to Raven so we can get on with the program because you're in for a real treat. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for opening this up in a perfect way. It's so great to be with you all tonight. My name is Raven Douglas. I'm our head of civic engagement programs here at States Win, and we are super, super excited for our second event of our State Bridges series this year, helping to support organizations in Alaska and Georgia. We are in for a wonderful treat and phenomenal panel featuring speakers from Asians Rising Georgia Alliance, Georgia Youth Justice Coalition for Education, Alaska Voter Hub, as well as 907 Policy Project. But before we get into the panel with our partners, we first want to bring on our host team speakers. We see everyone in the chat. And so our host teams are the folks who help to drive people to these fundraisers and really give their grassroots dollars at this time. So if you are a host team, please come on camera so that we can introduce you all. Huge thank you to our folks that are hosting tonight. Maureen Sheehan with States Win South Bay. We have Carla Vandervorst with States Win Sacramento, Philip Smith with States Win Yolo, as well as Lisa Rosenthal with States Win CA Penn. I see a lot of folks from these places in the chat, so feel free to, kind of root on your speakers. But we would love to start with Maureen first to tell us a little bit about herself, as well as why the State Bridges program is so important to them.
Hi, everyone. I joined Stateswin South Bay in 2019 and found my community activism home. South Bay is in Silicon Valley. We're the South Bay of the Bay Area. And we just love supporting our State Bridges partners. They are doing the critical community organizing work that we need to do year round. We're really proud to be supporting State Bridges partners in Alaska this year. It's the first time that Alaska has been part of our States Win State Bridges family and community. And we're thrilled to welcome them to the States Win community. As we say, we come for the cause, we stay for the community. And now we're going to hear from Carla Vanderverse from Stateswin, Sacramento, California.
Thanks, Maureen. As Maureen said, I'm Carla Vandervorst. I'm the team captain for Stateswin Sacramento, and I'm really excited to be here tonight. This will be my first State Bridges, so I think I'm really in for a treat. I watched the other recording of the other one, and I listened to the whole thing, and it was really amazing. So I think this one will be amazing as well. And Philip Smith is going to go next.
Yeah, hi. Hi everyone, I'm Philip. I'm proud to welcome you on behalf of Stateswin Yolo. It's one of the volunteer teams that's co-hosting today. And Yolo County sits in the heart of California's Sacramento Valley. I'm here in the city of Davis, the home of UC Davis, with a deeply engaged civic community, and as well as there's like West Sacramento, Woodland, and Winters. And it's a county that blends that sort of university energy with agricultural roots and has a long tradition of grassroots progressive action. So Stateswin Yolo, we've been running since 2017 and part of that tradition. And I think one thing that those 8 years of organizing has taught us is that sustained year-round civic engagement is what creates lasting change. And it's not just activity in election years. And that's why we've not only helped with fundraising for organizations identified by state bridges in the past, but we've also supported other year-round grassroots groups we've identified ourselves, such as Headcount and Public Citizen. And well, today we're here to extend the support to these 4 organizations that are building civic power in communities that need it most. And so from Yolo County to Alaska and Georgia, we're stronger together. And I encourage everybody to give generously. Thank you. So next up is Lisa Rosenthal.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Rosenthal from Stateswin CA Peninsula. We are the Stateswin organization a little bit south of San Francisco, all the way to near where Maureen's group starts. We cover the area of the whole area south of San Francisco. And I joined Stateswin back in 2017, along with many of the people in our chapter after Trump was elected the first time. We can't believe we're living through this a second time, but we find hope through our Stateswin community and the work we are doing. We have an amazing chapter. We have 29 co-leaders in our chapter. I'm one of the co-captains, and we put on fundraising events. We like to say we put the fun in fundraising, and we are also very much supporters of state bridges. We've been co-hosting these events from the beginning and are big believers in doing that year-round organizing. So very happy to be here. And now it's my privilege and honor to be the one to ask all of you to do what we all came here to do, and that's to support these wonderful organizations who really need our help. I want to thank our State Bridges partners who have taken the time to be here today. We are so honored to have you here and to work for you, and we thank you for taking the time to be here. And you know that at Stateswin, we're focused on creating meaningful change at the state legislative level. That's all the work that we do. It's all based on what's going on in the states. So we're proud to be supporting these organizations that are fundamental to building progressive power in Alaska and Georgia. And we're here to help amplify and support your essential work. So I want to remind everybody who's here to please make a donation, and that these organizations are also 501c3. So every contribution you make today is fully tax deductible. And so far we have raised over $48,000. I think it's 48 last count. $48,801. So that's great, but we can do more. We're sharing the donation link in the chat right now. So if you're able, please give what you can, whether it's $5, $10, $100, $1,000. It's money that you won't be paying in taxes. Consider making it a recurring donation, because year-round giving is really critical for these organizations. And your donation, because it's tax deductible, goes even further. Every donation, no matter the size, will make a strategic difference in maintaining and expanding progressive power in these critical states. We know how important these states are going to be in the midterms, and so all the work that's going on now will help to these organizations to do the work they do that creates meaningful change. And with that, I will turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Lisa. One, I could not have said it any better myself. Two, it's so exciting to see such a strong California delegation helping to support our partners all across the country. So thank you again to each of our host teams and folks who have joined tonight. With that, I would love to begin to introduce our partner organizations that are joining. So for our host team speakers, feel free to go off camera. Thank you so much. And then we will have our partner organizations come on as well. As I mentioned, we are super excited to be hosting folks from Alaska and Georgia. We are excited to have Ashna Khanna from the Asians Rising Georgia Alliance, Kayla Doby with the Georgia Youth Justice Coalition for Education, Emily Leek Michi with Alaska Voter Hub, and Aubrey Weber with 907 Policy Project. And so I would like to take a moment to have everyone kind of go around and introduce themselves. And again, if you are one of our partner organizations, feel free to come on camera so everyone can see your lovely faces. And so we would love to, if we could start with Ashna, would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work, and then we'll go to Kayla to cover our Georgia organizations, and then I'll pass it to Aubrey and Emily, if that makes sense. Go
Yes,
ahead,
of
Ashna.
course. Yep. And this is, sorry, is it the full overview or just a short introduction?
Yeah, no, just go ahead, 2 or 3 minutes. Tell us a little bit about you, yourself, and more about the work that your organization is doing.
All right, amazing. Well, it's so great to see everyone here. Such a great showing. My name is Ashna Kanda, and I am the executive director for Asians Rising Georgia Alliance. I just want to take a moment to start by talking about why this work is so personal for me and transition on how that really is what we do here in Georgia. So I was born on actually Jackson, Mississippi, and I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, in a tight-knit immigrant community where family, culture, food, loud noises all day in the evening, and someone's always over in the kitchen cooking, and community really shaped how I saw the world. And like so many immigrant families, my parents came to this country believing deeply in the promise of America. But after 9/11, something really shifted. And I think as I grew older as a South Asian woman, I started to realize that the systems were not built to work for people who look like me. And I remember people telling me, go back to the country where you came from. And I remember thinking, where exactly is that? Because I was born here. And that reminds myself and how our communities may feel about how fragile belonging can be and how important it is that our communities are not just present in this country, but are organized and feel powerful within it. And even today, immigration policy isn't abstract to me. It's deeply, deeply personal. For my family, immigration policy isn't theoretical. It shows up every day in our lives. I have relatives who worry about if they'll be able to stay in this country they call home. I have family members whose partners are stuck overseas and separated by visa uncertainty, waiting months or even years to unite. It really shapes how families like mine can really feel like if they can stay together. And that is just one small snippet of why this work matters so deeply to me. And it's also why Georgia is such an important place to do this work right now. Georgia has become one of the most politically consequential states in the country. Our elections are really decided by razor thin margins, sometimes just a couple hundred to a few thousand votes. And at the same time, Asian American communities are the fastest growing ethnic population here in Georgia. Today, we have over 600,000 Asian Americans, and the number of eligible voters have more than doubled in the last decade. However, we feel like when it comes to civic participation in elections and decisions, our communities, alongside other marginalized and BIPOC communities in Georgia, are left out of the equation. And so, growth doesn't automatically translate into power. And that's where Asians Rising Georgia really comes in. Our mission is really to build and sustain long-term civic and political power by really cultivating youth and multi-generational leadership. We invest in artivism and cultural narrative storytelling, and we advance bold, community-rooted policy that really helps to shift narratives and moves people into action. And this happens all 365 days, every single year. And so, and we do that in like three big ways. And so the first bucket is community organizing rooted in culture. Grassroots organizing is rooted in culture and belonging. And so we start by listening. So we host a lot of focus groups. We have a lot of multilingual community conversations. We ask communities, what are the issues that you're faced with, whether it's economic pressures, education for children, or even safety, given the rise of really hate. And from there, we create spaces where folks can learn a little bit more and engage in civic life in ways that feel culturally familiar and welcoming. One really popular program is our Chai and Chats program, where basically it's a whole bunch of aunties and uncles getting together in like churches and living rooms and restaurants and community spaces. And it creates an entry point way for people who may have never saw themselves as leaders in their communities or as folks who had a voice that could directly be engaged. And, we also organize programs like Asian Uncles for Democracy. And so these conversations become the foundation of our organizing. And our organizers take that work directly into the communities. We knock on doors, we have conversations with voters, and we help families understand how the issues that that shape their lives directly connects with the decisions being made by local and statewide elected officials. And we've seen how powerful that work can be. I just want to mention last year in Georgia, we had the Georgia Public Service Commissioner race, which was the race where no one knew what that was, but it was the people who decided your utility bills. And utility bills were high. And as we were knocking on doors, folks were like, I'm really worried about affordability and being able to provide for my family. And through community conversations, through coalitions with partners like GYJC, which you'll hear from next, we were able to really put two progressive candidates who are fighting for working class communities in the Public Service Commissioner race for the first time in over 20 years in Georgia. And so this is a powerful example of when communities understand how policy affects their lives, they can really act, and it can really lead to material outcomes. And that advocacy needs to continue. The second, bucket we do is a lot of like leadership development. We do a lot of mentorship, leadership training. A lot of our canvassers that knocked with us for a first time have actually become full-time staff members. And so we run leadership programs so that members can have an opportunity to step into advocacy roles, whether it be advocating against a book ban in your school board meeting or coming to the state capitol and knowing what bills are taking place and testifying. We help connect those dots for folks in their communities to the decisions that are being made for them, without them. And so for us, building power really looks like our communities are not just mobilized during election season, but they're mobilized year round throughout the entire year after year after year. And the second part I'll add is like another unique part of our work is artivism and storytelling. So artivism is where we basically use art and activism as a way for folks to think about storytelling and ways that our communities are seen and what it means to be an Asian American in the South. And one of the projects that we're really proud about is the ABCs of AAPI's coloring book, where we partnered with 30 Asian American artists to create a coloring book celebrating our history, culture, and leadership down in the South. We sold out over 8,000 copies, and we had an entire public art installation on the Atlanta Beltline. We were even featured on the Kelly Clarkson show. But what mattered most wasn't the media attention. Honestly, it was when we were going around from different bookstores, it was watching families come together, parents and kids sitting, coloring, learning about the community and how to get engaged, and seeing themselves reflected as part of that decision making. And so for many families, it was the first time that they had attended an Asian American cultural or civic event that really connected their story to what's happening in Georgia and in the decision-making chambers of Georgia at the local and state level. And then the third bucket I would say is policy advocacy and rapid response. As you know, our communities are under attack. Last year, Georgia saw the largest workplace immigration raid at the Hyundai plant, and it targeted Korean Americans. And moments like this creates fear across all of our communities collectively. And so when moments like this happen, our teams move. We provide know your rights materials. We host community briefings. We make sure what families know that are directly impacted, what protections and resources are available to them. And we know now that still that fear is being faced in our communities. We hear young folks saying, I'm, driving my parents around because they don't feel comfortable. And so the truth is our communities are growing really fast. The attacks are continuing to happen and the infrastructure is just not there to support it. And so that is why I would say Asians Rising Georgia is so important. As you can tell, my puppy feels the same way. And I just really appreciate y'all here today.
Thank you so much, Ashna. I will pass it to you next, Kayla.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, Ashna. And thank you everyone for being here tonight and supporting organizing across the country. My name is Kayla Doby. I am the Deputy Executive Director at Georgia Youth Justice Coalition. Born and raised Georgia, graduated from UGA, go Dogs, and have been working in the state for the past 10 years. But to share more about GYJC, we are a youth-led organization really building civic engagement and leadership with young people across Georgia. Our work is really rooted in a simple belief that people most impacted by political decisions should have the power to shape them. So, over the last 5 years, we've grown from a little grassroots group of teenagers to include over 12,000 members from 128 counties out of our 159 beautiful counties across our state. We are really meeting young people where they already are on high school and college campuses, online, and in communities that are often overlooked in traditional civic engagement efforts. From there, we've really helped young people build the confidence and skills to participate in civic life, talking with their neighbors about the issues affecting their communities, advocating for themselves with local officials, and engaging with lawmakers during the legislative session. Last year, GYJC knocked on nearly 150,000 doors across the state of Georgia, educating voters on rising utility costs, which Ashna also spoke to the Public Service Commission elections last year. Those conversations really helped people connect the challenges they see in their communities to the decisions being made by those in power. And with your support, we will be knocking on more than 300,000 doors this year and make more than 250,000 phone calls talking with voters of all ages about the issues that matter to young Georgians. I will also say that our work is really built on real relationships and consistency. We show up to school board meetings every single month in 8 school districts across the state. And during the legislative session, we bring young people to the Capitol every Thursday so that they can be a part of the full life cycle of how policy decisions are made in our state. And just a few years ago, lawmakers rarely saw young people in the Capitol outside of school field trips. And now, when we walk into that building, they recognize our members and they know our work. And so, on top of that, part of what really makes us unique is our commitment to year-round organizing as well, and really building real community and not just showing up during election cycles. And as Ashna said, like this year in Georgia and across the country, it is like no other. We are facing existential threats to democracy, unprecedented attacks on immigrant communities and communities of color, both in our country and across the ocean. And we're not the only ones organizing young people. In fact, just last year, Turning Point claimed to start 31 chapters in Georgia, and University of Georgia's Turning Point chapter won a national award for being the best Turning Point chapter. So Turning Point has really built a national presence of organizing young people around fear and division. And at GYJC, we are really focused on building something different. a movement that is truly rooted in joy and the courage to choose hope and better for our communities every single day. And through that work, young Georgians are rediscovering something that can feel very rare today. And that is just really a sense of community and the love of organizing together. So since last August, we've launched 38 chapters in schools and neighborhoods across Georgia, with more young people reaching out to bring a GYJC chapter to their community every day. And we're not slowing down anytime soon. So thank you.
Awesome. I'm so excited to dive deep into all of the work that you all have done and are doing. But before that, I would love to have Emily go ahead and introduce herself and tell us about the work at Alaska Voter Hub.
Thank you, Raven, and thank you for the opportunity to share a bit more. My name is Emily Leek Mitchie. I'm here in Anchorage, Alaska. It's a brisk 3 below today, but the sun is shining, so that's really nice. I am the executive director of the Alaska Voter Hub. We are the state's C3 coordinating table. Alaska's nonprofit community plays a critical role in educating and turning out voters, especially in underrepresented communities across the state, communities of color, women, and young voters. The Alaska Voter Hub is a coalition of 22 diverse nonprofit organizations. We work together to increase voter participation amongst historically underserved communities across the state. And our work is two-pronged. So we lead voter outreach and education, and we work on the policy side to make sure that Alaska's election system stays free and fair and accessible to all voters. We formally launched in 2021 when I came on board as the first ever staff person and director, and we've grown quickly in our reach and our partnerships and our capacity since then. At our core, our work is pretty simple. We want voters to get clear and culturally competent information from people they already trust. We lead and coordinate the strategy. We build the messaging and align partners. We share tools. We make sure that outreach is happening consistently across this huge rural and diverse state. If there's gaps, we don't ignore them. If a community isn't being reached or maybe the capacity just isn't there yet, we will step in and build programming. And 2026 is our largest effort yet. It's not just a November push. We're working on year-round engagement. We're working on relational organizing, coordinating field. We do re-granting to our partner organizations, and we're doing that policy defense piece as well, both on the state level and at the national level, where we're seeing more threats to our democracy. And we're all working together. We're not just trying to bump turnout this one cycle. We are building lasting infrastructure. We also, I referenced that we move resources directly into communities. So through pass-through funding, we will re-grant to our organizational partners. They are already trusted in their communities and serve communities that have been historically underfunded. And this allows our partner groups to do outreach work that maybe wouldn't otherwise happen. So in 2026, we're expanding that model, and we have more on the horizon than ever before. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm excited to pass it over to Aubrey, who is doing awesome work here in Alaska also.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Raven, and thank you all for spending your evening hearing about our work. My name is Aubrey Weber. I run an organization called the 907 Policy Project. We are a comms hub based in Anchorage, Alaska. 907 is our statewide area code, for those of you that are curious. We primarily specialize in mass communications campaigns. And so for us, that starts with a lot of coalition work to figure out what is the issue that we want to focus on and educate the public on. Then we generally do a significant round of research, create a narrative frame, and then use that frame to educate the public through essentially every advertising means that we can. And generally work with a coalition of partners to kind of amplify that. We started in 2022. There wasn't a comms hub in Alaska, and really one of the kind of core gaps in the communications infrastructure in the state was kind of a roving sort of organization that didn't have a specific issue it was tied to. So we work with a ton of labor organizations, conservation organizations, repro organizations. But the thing that we realized is all of them are tied to kind of a core issue that dictates their work. And so we tried to kind of work in between to fill those gaps. An example of that is last year when we were looking at the early text of the Big Beautiful Bill and trying to figure out what that means. That's a scary thing for every state in the country, but in Alaska, it was a little bit different. We have the highest healthcare costs in the nation. We have the most fragile healthcare system in the nation. And we have a SNAP program that's run through the state that has the like lowest success rate in the country. And so those cuts cut deeper in Alaska. On top of all of that, we just have extremely high prices for everything, and so things like tariffs are hitting Alaskans much harder. And when we're looking at healthcare, it can literally be a life or death situation. We have so few facilities, medical facilities in the state. And so you're talking about life flights out of state, which are also funded by Medicaid. So you can see how that system, that network just crumbles very, very quickly. And there was a lot of misinformation going around about where these cuts were coming from and who is responsible. And so we did multiple town halls, getting out as many as 2,000 people. We did paid advertising. We did constant events to drive earned media, including serving soup out in front of one of our federal delegation members' offices in the cold and in the winter to kind of highlight the importance of being there for our neighbors. And so, yeah, I think we just really try to see where we fit in and how we can be helpful. Generally, we like to run these programs over a year so that we really have the ability to cement a narrative and really make change rather than kind of get trapped in a rapid response cycle. So looking forward to the question portion. And again, thank you all for tuning in and listening to us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aubrey. And before I get into the questions, just want to let folks know if you do have a question, feel free to please drop it in the chat and we will do our best to answer them throughout the conversation. We've already got one question. Will this recording be shared? Absolutely. It will be on our webpage after this. But actually, I'm going to kick the first question back to you, Aubrey. If you could help like level set and set the stage for what's happening in Alaska right now. So what issues are top of mind? Obviously, you mentioned healthcare and Medicaid, but what issues are top of mind in the state? What are some of your top priorities for 2026 and beyond? And then specifically, how do those issues intersect with the state legislator? Also, because I'm adding a little bit onto this because you are a comms hub. You talked about this a lot, but if there's anything else you want to add on why, in a day and age where most people get their information online and social media, why having a comms strategy is essential to grassroots organizing in this day and time, would love to hear, your take on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. For a little bit of context for folks, we have kind of an unconventional legislative system in that we have a long history of bipartisan coalitions in our legislature. And right now we have bipartisan coalitions in the majority in both our House and Senate. So that's made up of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And then you have a Republican minority that tends to be a little bit more far right MAGA. And So that is something that we're very supportive of, and it works very well because generally they look at what are the core issues facing a majority of the state and really try to focus on those issues. However, we have one of the strongest governors and gubernatorial systems in the country. And so our governor has used his veto pen heavy-handedly, and it takes a three-quarters majority to override a veto. And so one of the core issues that we've been working on for the past several years is an increase to education funding. Public education in Alaska is critical. There is a push to fund these private charter schools in the state. But those charter schools only exist in the urban centers. And when you have a state that is a third size of the landmass of the lower 48, you have tons of communities that have no access to that sort of education. So properly funding our public education system is critical, especially in a state where we have very limited higher education. Um, so that is something that we worked on very hard. And last year, after several years of advocacy from many organizations, the legislature did pass a funding package. It did end up being a one-time funding package that was vetoed by the governor, but they were able to override that veto for the first time in several decades. They had lawmakers that originally voted against the education package vote to override because they were so upset with all the work that went in to getting that through, just to be stomped on by one person. Other programs that we work on around the legislature, we're working on a defined benefit pension system. We have a huge problem, again, related to education in Alaska, where teachers come here for a couple of years when they're fresh out of school. It's easy to get a job, and then they go somewhere that's going to give them a pension. We need to keep educators in the state. We need to stop the brain drain that we've been experiencing for several years now. So that is kind of one of the core functions, and really it's about educating the public on the fact that they need to reach out to their legislators to support these policies because it is going to be hard to pass with the threat of a veto. Um, but also letting them know to thank their legislators, to support that work, and understanding the issues that we're facing, whether it's education funding, a general fiscal crisis facing the state. There are a lot of issues, and the legislature has a ton of work to do in a state like Alaska.
Thank you. And Kayla, I will pass the same question to you. So, what issues are top of mind in Georgia right now? What are some of your top priorities in 2026 and beyond? And how do those issues intersect with what's happening at the state legislature?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's many things we could talk about tonight, but I would say something that is really a big issue for us right now in Georgia is literally the threat to democracy here in our state. In January, the FBI executed a search warrant at the Fulton County Board of Elections warehouse as part of ongoing investigations tied to false claims that the 2020 election in Georgia was stolen. Those attacks are a deliberate effort to thwart the outcome of our midterm elections in our state, where we also have an open seat for governor for the first time in nearly a decade, as well as congressional races as well, including U.S. Senate. And other critical down ballot races in our state legislature and local elections as well. And so we have attacks coming from the federal level and the state level. Just last week during crossover day in our state legislature, we were there to stop a bill that literally had one goal, which was to make it harder for Georgians to vote. This bill tried to cut countywide early voting and force Georgia into an untested paper ballot system that would have thrown a massive wrench into our election systems. But as I was saying earlier, like we are committed to the ground game and being consistent and not just showing up one time. So we have spent years building relationships with key decision makers in our state legislature, as well as activating young people to fight for their right to vote. So even when we're facing down authoritarianism, we were still there when it came to the Georgia State Senate to pass that election breaking bill on Friday. And our work bringing young people to speak to these lawmakers helped stop it. I would say the next big piece for us, similar to Alaska, is always education. We are not just dealing with a crisis of the current moment, but for decades, Georgia has been one of only two states in the country without need-based financial aid for college students, even though we have the third highest student loan debt per borrower in the country, me being one of those folks in debt with student loans. And that is an issue we've championed in the state capitol for 3 years now. And just last week, the Georgia State House passed a bill making a $325 million investment into need-based aid. So claps for that. On the K through 12 level, 92% of Georgians attend public school, which is really high. And the state legislator decides how they're funded, right? So our statewide school funding formula has not been updated in over 40 years, right? Which is twice as old as many of the young people we organize with. So at the same time, students and families are just also that are living in Metro Atlanta are confronting 42 school closures, and that is just in two school districts, too. So education is always a big bucket of our work and something we are constantly advocating for at the local and state level, in our school boards, and in our capital. I would also say another piece related to schools and like community safety is we have been organizing to pass safe zone policies at school districts to protect students from ICE, because statewide safe zone legislation stalled in the legislature. And we know that Georgia families deserve to send their students to neighborhood schools that are thriving and are as diverse as our communities are. And at the end of the day, our state legislator really holds the key to make that vision a reality. Um, as far as other issues and how our state legislator impacts that, I would say finally here, the word of the year, affordability. I'm sure everyone here has heard that word more times than they ever have in their entire life. But seriously, in Georgia, going back to our Public Service Commission elections last year, we are really talking about rising utility bills. Our lovely Georgia Power Corporation here has a monopoly on our state. So there's not really many options for folks to get their power from, right? And they are also doling out contracts to build new data centers in our state. So right now, Atlanta is one of the fastest growing metro areas in the nation for the construction of new data centers. And last year's budget alone, Georgia legislators gave away $474 million in tax breaks and data centers. And the state is projected to lose $778 million per year between 2026 and 2030 on these tax breaks. Our lovely governor loves to always cite that Georgia is number one for business, but the question always remains, at what cost? So when we talk about knocking on doors in Atlanta, on the coast in Savannah, down in Southwest Georgia and Albany, up in Athens, which is also right near a new data center site, and where they are proposing a new ICE facility as well. Georgians of all backgrounds tell us about their concerns and the impacts of all of these different issues on their communities, right? And with the data center piece, we just also have state legislators who are cozying up to the Georgia Power lobbyists right on the Senate floor. And they are just flat out lying to Georgians about Georgia Power's plan to pass off the cost of data centers onto residential ratepayers. So for us, the state legislator is truly one of the most important levers of power in our state, second only to the governor's office. Decisions made in the legislature affect everything from school funding, infrastructure policy, to election administration and civil rights protections. And too often, our state legislator, which is the people's house, refuses to hear from the people. And so that's why we are really focused on helping young people understand exactly how the legislator works, from the ins and outs of the rules committees to the hot gossip that you might hear in that building, and how a record number of state senators are running for higher office right now because we have so many statewide seats that are open this year. And it's also creating a gridlock in this year's session as well. And we are just over the halfway point through our legislative session. So this year, we've already brought 92 young Georgians from all over the state into the Capitol, and having them speak directly to lawmakers. And we will continue to do that as we push through the final half of the session. And so for us, every session, the stakes are high in Georgia, but this year, with a state legislator that is taking cues from the federal government, our work on the state level, especially inside the building, the Capitol building, and out on the doors, is really now or never. And we have to meet this moment with everything we got. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot to work for after this year. And a lot to have to change in our communities that will be very difficult to do so. So this truly is a now or never moment for us as far as the issues in our state and our elected officials.
Yeah, absolutely. And, tens of thousands of miles away, still some of the same issues that you're dealing with across both states. And thank you both for speaking to kind of what's happening and top of mind in your states. Emily, I'd love to pose the next question to you. So many organizations within the Alaska Voter Hub are deeply rooted in rural communities, as you mentioned, across the state. So, one, can you explain why rural organizing is essential to building a representative government there? Two, how do your organizations approach issue-based organizing in these areas? And then three, we've never supported a hub, or as some people might call it, an alignment table in the state. But if you could speak to why that's critical in Alaska, again, because it's so large, because it's so rural, and how these organizations work together, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Rural organizing is absolutely essential to building a representative government in Alaska, simply because the state is so big, and there's such a big proportion of the population that live in these deeply rural areas. We will often cite that 80% of Alaska's communities are not accessible by road. One statistic that I love to share is that if I think it's Staten Island had the same population density as Alaska, there'd be 15 people there. It's hard to overstate how rural our state is. And the other component is that the outreach needs to be consistent, and it needs to be led by trusted voices and community leaders. Participation can't just revolve around one election, and voters need to hear from trusted organizations early and repeatedly across the entire calendar year, and not just in those final weeks before November. At the same time, rural communities face the biggest barriers to participation. I mentioned many communities aren't accessible by road. Accessing polling places can be complicated. I remember a handful of years ago, we received a call from someone in a village who said, I can't get to my polling place because the river didn't freeze and I can't drive my snowmobile across the river to get to my polling place. One of our partners right now has a organizer going from village to village on Snow Machine, talking to people about getting registered and voting in their local elections. And voting can be complicated. So if we want a government that truly represents Alaska, we have to build these organizational strategies that actually work in these rural contexts. And I mentioned that rural organizing must be led by the people who are part of those communities. So many of the organizations that are participating in the Voter Hub are deeply rooted in rural regions, and have long-standing relationships with tribal governments, community leaders, and local residents. That trust is critical. People are much more likely to engage when the conversation is coming from someone who understands the local context and that shares that community's lived experience. Um, and when it comes to issue-based organizing, we approach that differently than many campaigns do. So instead of starting with a national policy agenda, we're listening to what communities are already talking about. So in rural communities, that often means things about subsistence access, energy costs, transportation, education, the availability of healthcare, because these are the things that shape daily life in rural Alaska. And they're also the issues where state policy decisions have direct impact. And voter engagement is connected to those real world concerns, and people see how civic participation links directly to decisions being made in the legislature. It kind of helps move that conversation beyond like an abstract civic duty and a way forward to influence the policy that affects people's lives. Um, Another important piece to recognize is that community leaders are already playing a major role in shaping civic participation in rural areas. When tribal leaders, educators, youth leaders, and other respected voices, they're kind of bridging that gap between communities and the broader political system. So supporting those leaders and making sure that they have the resources to engage their broader community is a big part of how we approach this work. So yeah, rural organizing really strengthens democracy in Alaska because it ensures that communities that are often overlooked in national political conversations are shaping the decisions that affect them directly.
Yeah. No, I love how you said basically like there needs to be real practical solutions to real genuine problems in organizing in a space like Alaska. And I totally get that. I did want to address one of the questions that came into the chat on how will these organizations be using these funds. We stay up to date with these organizations throughout the entire year, and we do get updates from them in the summer around June or July. And so we will share that content on how they've been able to staff up, engage, and organize from this moment to when we get to connect with them throughout the year. And we will keep everyone updated on how your resources are being used in a phenomenal way. But Ashna, I'd love to pose this question to you because we have seen nationally heightened immigration enforcement. And it's been increased not only across the country, but in Georgia as well. And community organizations like you all are often the folks who are the first line of support. But we also know that immigration issues go beyond what's happening with ICE, right? And there are many other ways that immigrant communities need to be protected and need to be advocated for. So can you talk about how your organization is working on the ground to educate communities about their rights, build trust, and ensure families feel supported in this moment of heightened enforcement, but also beyond what's happening with ICE as well?
Yeah, this is such an important question. And I think, especially because when ICE enforcement increases, and we've been seeing this nationally, right? And especially here locally in Georgia, community organizations are usually the first and most trusted place for families to turn to for accurate information and support. We see this firsthand is that when enforcement increases, so does like fear. It spreads incredibly fast, especially in immigrant communities where there's language barriers, where there's a lot of misinformation, and it feels very isolating and can really leave community members feeling very incredibly vulnerable and unsafe and unwilling to even leave their homes. And so our role is to really meet this moment with trusted support. Our team quickly mobilizes to translate and distribute Know Your Rights information in multiple languages, making sure that this information is out there, what their rights are at work, at home, how they can protect themselves and their families. And I think this goes regardless of immigration status. The amount of calls that we've actually gotten that is like, I'm a naturalized citizen, but I'm carrying my passport everywhere. I'm fearful of even going to the airport has been so much. And so really we're seeing this fear across all communities, across despite, immigration status. And I think it's so important of how this information reaches folks. I will say we actually don't rely on a lot of traditional channels, right? So last Thanksgiving, when we were hearing of increased ICE in Atlanta, we were around Thanksgiving going to all the local businesses and trusted community networks. Like we were calling folks that we knew had friends and like big groups, and we were asking folks to spread this information, especially in like within community, because we know that getting trusted information, getting it quickly, getting it in the moment is so important. And I think the trust is really the point that really gets big. I would say right now in Georgia, the stakes are so high. One of our communities, Marietta, in Cobb County, just announced that they will be working with ICE. And we are seeing programs like 287G allowing and increasing in Georgia in the same places that just a couple years ago we did a lot of sheriff election work and a lot of work to engage with our communities. And we're seeing a lot of shifts and changes in the ways that localities are working with federal law enforcement. This kind of enforcement has real consequences. I think, like I said, folks are afraid to leave their homes, not, are afraid to go vote with what Kayla was saying with the Fulton County election and how they went into the election office. And so people are afraid to take their kids into school and even out to dinner. Just in a focus group that we had, folks were like, Buford Highway, which is known to like a lot of our immigrant communities at home, it was empty. And so a lot of the places that you see usually that are like bustling with folks like out with families and getting ice cream or dessert or just dinner laid out at night, we're seeing those are the areas that are seeing that not a lot of folks are out, not the same kinds of folks are even feeling comfortable walking outside in their neighborhoods outside their homes. And I would say Georgia is especially different from other states in the way that makes this fear more intense. We have a law that prohibits local governments from adopting sanctuary policies. And if folks refuse to work with law enforcement, they are at the risk of losing state funding. And so I think really the stakes are high for our communities. The fear is high really at, here in Georgia. And this happening is like what we're seeing is like the highest numbers of deportations, as well as we're home to one of the largest detention immigration facilities, not to mention another one that is going to be approved and coming to Georgia to host folks all across the South. And so Georgia has been this sort of essential point where communities are fearful. A lot of the laws are not in favor with us, and there's such a huge fear here over our communities. I would say that's why the work that we do or the organizations we work with is so important, because we need long-term community organizing and that trust already built, so that communities can really be in that space, getting the information and then getting the action to change. That community infrastructure is so critical right now. And I just appreciate everyone who's donated so far and really that are supporting immigrant communities in this moment of fear and crisis and time.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of helping to support, we just have 3 minutes left in our program, and we've already raised over $55,000 to help support these organizations, which is phenomenal. So please continue to give in these last couple of moments. Our team is continuing to put links in the chat, but please continue to donate and end this program out strong. So I would love, I had more questions to ask, but we had such a good conversation that we've run out of time. But I always like to end every panel on a positive note. And so rapid fire, like 20 to 30 seconds as we close. What is something giving you hope or bringing you joy in this moment? It could be organizing related. It could be you're going on vacation tomorrow, whatever it is. But what is bringing you joy in this moment? And I will start with Aubrey and then Emily first.
Yeah, thank you so much. Real quick, I will say just community alignment in a way that we've never had it before. And we have a huge election cycle in Alaska. And so leading into this year, C3 and C4 partners came together to write a comprehensive plan of all the programs that we need to run to be successful. We are doing holistic fundraising. We have created a table where we're talking about what are the needs on various programs so we can divert funding immediately to the biggest need. And that is something that we've never done before. It's a pretty big task and it's, had its hiccups, but it's working incredibly well. And I think just being more aligned and more organized as a community gives me hope in a time where that is short.
Awesome. Thank you, Aubrey. What about you, Emily?
Yeah. First and foremost, the sun is coming back. And so you can feel the warmth of the sun on your face
Yes.
now that we're into the spring months. And I'll just echo what Aubrey said, the energy and the enthusiasm and the excitement that's building, it's palpable. There are more organizations engaging uh, deeper and I would say more collaboratively than ever before and earlier. A lot of
Awesome.
energy growing here.
Awesome. What about you, Kayla?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say it's our young people finding genuine joy of organizing again and being in community with each other, especially through our chapters. One of our fantastic chapter leaders, Georgia born, daughter of two immigrants, she spotted UIJC tabling on her campus one day. She signed up and stayed with us at the table for an hour, helped us get more tech students signed up. And from there, she's helped build Georgia Tech into a powerhouse GYJC chapter. She hosted State Rep Tanya Miller for a phone bank event on campus with over 30 students. And she and other Georgia Tech members join us at the Capitol every single Thursday. And they have really just been there grinding it out with us during the legislative session. And it's been really exciting to see these people come together around the same values and like a commitment to a better Georgia and a better future for themselves. They are all like genuinely good friends. And really seeing people find that love and joy with each other is honestly what democracy is all about, because that's how we move forward. So that is something that has been bringing me hope and continues to bring me hope and makes me excited about the work I do.
Awesome. And would love to round out the panel with you, Ashna.
Yeah, I think something that's given me hope is my team. I mean, it's been such a difficult year and a couple of difficult years, and we're just a staff of 11 full-time folks, and the amount that of care that they bring into all of their work and communities every single day is incredible. And I think just like bringing more joyful spaces. Just 2 weeks ago, we did a bet on our future Lunar New Year celebration, and it was one of those moments where the room was filled with over 150 folks, 15 local artists, 10 small businesses. And so many folks were like, I needed this space of joy and belonging in the middle of a very hard and long legislative session. And I think a hard and long political moment that we're in Georgia right now in this country.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad we were able to end on such a positive note. And I'm so excited to announce our final number raise for tonight. So drum roll, please. Tonight we have raised $56,443.88 by 386 donations given throughout the course of this program. Thank you to every single person that attended, all 99 of you that were on this call. Huge thank you to our host team speakers, as well as all of our partner organizations that make this program possible. We are so excited to be moving these early dollars into these states so these folks can have early resources to build the teams and make the lasting impact that we know that they can make. You can continue to give on our State Bridges webpage, on our States Win website. We'll follow up with plenty of information on how to give. Continue to give through ActBlue and via Donor Advised Fund, via check. We will take your donations in any way you want to give them to us. But again, thank you all for being here tonight. And so excited to continue to build power with these organizations. Y'all have a great night.